I'm living with my real family. Through a divorce. My husband, who had been away for work for 3 years, apparently had an affair and even had a child. It was a shock to me, who had known nothing about it. It was an unbelievable betrayal. But I no longer cared. What? Dad doesn't know anything? My daughter's words mark the beginning of a new life. There's no room for you in it anymore. You can drown in the hell you've created for yourselves. My name is Olivia Harris. I married my husband, Lucas, in my mid-20s. I met Lucas in college, where we were both part of a university club. At that time, I was a member of the literature club. I loved reading and writing novels, which is why I joined. But Lucas was different. He was 2 years older and passionate about becoming a teacher. Apparently, he had always struggled with understanding novels and stories, and he joined the club to improve in that area. He said he wanted to become a teacher because he had met a teacher he respected and wanted to be like her. Apparently, his first love was also that female teacher, which was part of his motivation. When I teased him about his confession, asking if she was a beautiful teacher with a charming beauty mark, Lucas admitted so. You know how they say kids often have their first crush on their teachers? When I asked him why he wanted to become a teacher, Lucas laughed sheepishly and said that it's a fond memory now. I also had dreams of becoming a novelist. But seeing my talented literature club peers strive and fail made me give up on that dream, thinking it was impossible for me. Maybe that's why I was drawn to Lucas. His dedication to his dream attracted me, and it didn't take long for our friendship in the club to turn into a romantic relationship. During our time together at university, Lucas completed his teacher training program. He graduated from college and obtained his teaching license, but he didn't become a teacher right away. He struggled to pass the teacher employment exams. It seems that the number of people who become teachers is decreasing, but this is only true if you look at the overall situation. Our region had a high number of aspiring teachers, and Lucas couldn't pass the exams for several years. This meant he couldn't find a job, and he grew increasingly anxious. In the meantime, Lucas took a job as a tutor at a publicly funded tutoring center. A publicly funded tutoring center is a cram school that is established and operated by a local government and is not for profit. It was apparently established for children who are unable to attend cram schools due to the ongoing economic recession and whose academic ability is declining. Working there would provide him with teaching know-how and be beneficial for his future. Lucas decided to apply for a position at the center. The center also needed people like Lucas, who had obtained a teaching license. Thus, Lucas became a tutor at the center. But his true aspiration was to become a teacher. Seeing Lucas's struggles up close, I strongly thought that I wanted to support his dream. When I shared my feelings with Lucas, he proposed to me. He had been considering marriage for a while, but was hesitant due to his uncertain situation. But my words made him feel that we could face the future together and helped him make up his mind. I might put you through some hardships, but will you live with me? Let's support each other and be happy. He looked at me directly. His unwavering gaze pierced me, and without hesitation, I nodded to his words. Soon after, we got married. I don't think our married life itself was bad at all. I quit my job at the publishing company and became a full-time housewife to support him and his dreams. With the help of my company, I got a job that I could do from home to contribute to our household income. Lucas continued working as a tutor at the public tutoring center while still aiming to become a teacher. In the meantime, our daughter Mary was born, and we supported each other even more. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Mary strengthened the bond between us as a family. However, after several years without passing the exams, Lucas eventually changed his mindset. I'm already a teacher in my own right. I don't need to be a school teacher. I didn't think he was wrong. The children he taught at the tutoring center admired him as a teacher. This, too, was a realization of his dream, so what was the problem? Yeah, I think that's fine. Thus, he decided that being a tutor was his job. But looking back now, I think this decision changed him significantly. At first, there didn't seem to be any changes. However, gradually, something else began to enter his previously serious life. Maybe it was the void left by the time he used to spend striving to become a teacher. Or perhaps it was the release from a state of constant tension. Maybe it was the frustration of not becoming a teacher after all. Whatever the cause, his lifestyle began to deteriorate. He rarely drank before, but now he started getting drunk at home. He never came home late without any notice, but now he was coming home late at night without any explanation. He used to spend a lot of time with Mary on weekends, but now he prioritized his own hobbies like gaming. He even started leaving all the household chores to me, which he used to help with. What happened to supporting each other? I asked Lucas to improve many times. At first, Lucas made some effort, albeit reluctantly. But over time, he became defiant. I'm the breadwinner of this house, so treat me better. But you said we would support each other, Lucas. Did I say that? What? I was stunned by Lucas's calm words, and I looked at him again. Where had the eyes that once looked straight at me gone? In the middle of the conversation, his gaze wandered aimlessly. His physique, which he had maintained with pride to not embarrass himself in front of his students, had become sloppy. The Lucas who had once shared his dreams with me was now just a shadow. The same was true for the Lucas who had been a good husband to me and a good father to Mary. Even when the groceries were heavy, he showed no sign of helping, and he had no interest in Mary's future. Olivia, if you're going to boss me around, do it when you earn more than me. Eventually, he started saying this whenever I asked for something. Even so, there seemed to be a minimum amount of family love left, as he never resorted to violence. He participated in birthday celebrations and might improve someday. I couldn't stop holding on to the faint hope that he might change, remembering the Lucas of the past. It was then that he was offered a 3-year assignment on a remote island. His tutoring center wanted to expand its activities to the island, and Lucas was chosen as one of the staff. Lucas accepted the offer without consulting us. Why didn't you talk to us about this? Mary is going through a tough time with her exams. Mary, who had been a little girl, was now a high school student. Lately, she was into watching game streams on her smartphone. I remember her talking about the importance of internet literacy when a famous streamer blew up recently. Anyway, a major change in environment during this time would be a burden not only for her exams, but also mentally. At my serious inquiry, Lucas shrugged his shoulders as if it were a bother. It's simple. I'll just go alone. That may be true, but... Lucas, are you okay? Will you be all right? I'm not a child, of course, I'll be fine. He answered, yawning out of boredom. As if to say that the content of our conversation was trivial. That's not what I mean. Doesn't he care about Mary or me? Won't he feel lonely being away? Before I could voice my concerns, Lucas sighed and said, Anyway, it's already decided. He assured me that he would send us money for living expenses and forcefully ended the conversation. The topic of his assignment was pushed forward in the same manner, and soon Lucas left for the island, without having a proper discussion with Mary and me. Even so, I worried about him and tried to call him every day. I feared his life alone would become even more chaotic. At first, he responded, but soon he became annoyed. Enough already. I'm not a child. Finding my calls bothersome, He told me not to call unless it was important. For Mary's sake and to avoid unnecessary conflict at home, I agreed. As a result, our family-like interactions with Lucas were almost cut off. He occasionally returned for holidays like Christmas. But Lucas showed no signs of being happy to see us again. Instead of engaging in our conversations, he was glued to his smartphone. "Dad, are you texting someone?" Perhaps Mary was uneasy about being half ignored. Or maybe it was just casual conversation, but Mary asked lightly. However, Lucas's response was a bit over the top. "It's none of your business who I'm texting or what I'm doing." His reply, tinged with irritation and anger, surprised both Mary and me. "I was just coordinating with the island people for my return," Lucas awkwardly added, perhaps realizing the harshness of his words. But the damage was done. An awkward atmosphere and my growing suspicions remained. Even though our relationship had become strained, I had spent more than a decade with him together as a married couple. I could sense when there were secrets. Lucas was hiding something from us now. But at that time, I still didn't know what it was. It was just around that time that Lucas's suspicious behaviors started to become more noticeable. He didn't react to our wedding anniversary, which he had barely remembered until last year. He forgot to send Christmas gifts to my parents, which he had done every year. He didn't even call Mary on her birthday, and he was withdrawing large, unexplained sums from our joint account. I questioned him about each instance, but Lucas brushed it off, saying it was just a coincidence and not giving any real reasons. While many things worried me, I couldn't stay silent about the money from our joint account. That money was not only our savings, but also Mary's college fund. At the very least, he should consider our child's future. The feeling of betrayal stung my heart. "What's going on? Explain it to me." "Well, it's nothing. Why do you always worry about the small stuff?" The Lucas I spoke to on the phone after months was no longer the serious person I once knew. Even though it was his personal time, he no longer seemed like someone who taught children. As I was stunned by his attitude, Lucas said something unbelievable. "The rental place here started feeling cramped, so I moved." "What? But isn't it almost 3 years now?" Yes, Lucas's assignment was supposed to end soon. Moving now seemed like a waste of money to me. I raised my voice without thinking, but Lucas acted as if it were no big deal. "I couldn't help it, it was driving me crazy." "Don't be stingy. I'm still sending money, aren't I?" "You say you're sending money, but you've been sending less lately." Since the beginning of the year, the amount Lucas sent us had decreased by several $100s. On top of that, he was talking about moving and withdrawing large sums without my consent. How could I not say something? But Lucas didn't give a clear answer even to this. "My life is tough too. How can you complain when I'm supporting you? Aren't you ashamed?" Supporting us. Listen. I've had enough of your complaints. I told you before, if you want to boss me around, earn more than me. With that, Lucas hung up abruptly. After that, we lost contact with Lucas. It seemed he was ignoring my calls, as he never picked up. Time passed, and 3 years came to an end, marking the end of Lucas's assignment. Without any contact from him, we didn't know what his plans were. He was supposed to come back, but there was no word about his return or any sign of his belongings being sent back. Even inquiries to the tutoring center were met with privacy policies, and they wouldn't tell us anything. One weekend, while Mary and I were worrying, the doorbell rang suddenly. It must be Lucas, I thought, as Mary and I looked at each other and went to the door. "Hey, long time no see." Standing at the door was indeed Lucas. But he wasn't alone. Next to him was a woman. probably in her mid-20s, with a striking beauty mark. Huh? Mary tilted her head as she looked at the woman's face. Did she know her? In the woman's arms was a baby, about 1 year old, sound asleep. Wait, what did Lucas say? Not I'm home, but long time no see. As I was bewildered by the situation, the woman smiled lightly at us. But her expression felt mocking, as if she were belittling us. Nice to meet you, madam. My name is Sophie Brown. Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia Harris. As I replied, Lucas couldn't hold back his laughter. What? What did I do? When I asked, confused, Lucas spoke with a thin smile. Nothing. Just thinking that today might be the last day you can use that last name. What are you talking about? I asked again, and Lucas answered with the same expression. Olivia, I'm divorcing you. What? His sudden declaration made my eyes widen. Honestly, I've been fed up with living with you for a long time. Lucas laughed, looking pleased, as if something amused him. When I got assigned to the island, I thought it was a chance to live alone, no matter how remote. I was thrilled. Then Lucas glanced at Sophie, showing her off. Sophie also smiled thinly at his gaze. But then I met Sophie on the island, and it turned out to be better than I ever imagined. According to Lucas, Sophie worked at the island's supermarket. They met shortly after he started his assignment. In a place with little entertainment, Sophie, who stood out with her sophistication, attracted Lucas. Sophie, who felt out of place on the island, also took a liking to Lucas, who was similar to her. So, you had an affair with Sophie? And that child is... Exactly. That's our child. The confession of the affair and the existence of an illegitimate child. Despite this, Lucas showed no sign of remorse. Both he and Sophie looked at us as if we were an amusing spectacle. It's funny how fate works, huh? Being tired of my family and then meeting someone who looks just like my first love. What? Sophie isn't noisy like you, and she's young. She accepted me as I am from the start. I couldn't tell if it was true or not. But Lucas seemed to genuinely believe it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so deeply involved. Lucas seemed intoxicated, if not by alcohol, then by his infatuation with the younger woman. I was thoroughly disillusioned with Lucas, who was smitten with a young girl, disregarding his age. At this moment, I was sure of one thing. The Lucas I once loved, who I vowed to support each other with, was gone from this world. All the time I spent with my fake family was a waste. Unaware of my disappointment, Lucas spoke happily. Finally, I can end it all today. I'm going to live with my real family. Through a divorce. As I listened to Lucas, I began to understand everything that had happened. He had been neglecting us and forgetting anniversaries because he was preoccupied with Sophie. He had withdrawn money and moved in anticipation of living with Sophie. In fact, they might already be living together. In any case, he had been using our family money for someone else. Sophie must have known this too. Yet, she shamelessly stood there, looking cozy with Lucas right in front of us, and my anger began to boil. Without me, the breadwinner, your life will be tough. I'll pay you alimony, but just enough. Even though I hadn't agreed to a divorce, Lucas was being unilateral. Honestly, I couldn't figure out what to say. Seeing my confusion and despair, Lucas and Sophie continued to smile contentedly. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Could it be that the reason they came to our house and provoked us, especially me, was to make me lose my temper and get physical? Then they could sue us and get out of paying alimony. If that's the case, how short-tempered does he think I am? Lost in these thoughts, I was momentarily speechless. What? Dad, you don't know anything? Mary, who had been looking something up on her smartphone, stopped and looked up. She let out a sigh of exasperation while looking at Lucas. It was an odd reaction for a daughter being abandoned by her father. Lucas asked with a puzzled expression, "What are you talking about? You really don't know anything." "Unbelievable," Mary said, leaving behind a "wait a minute," and went back into the house. A few minutes later, she returned with a book in her hand. She handed the book to Lucas. Recognizing the book, I let out a small gasp. Without noticing my reaction, Lucas took the book in confusion and looked at the cover. "This is a novel, right? The author is what?" Lucas exclaimed in shock. Apparently, he remembered just barely. It was a natural reaction. The name on the book cover was none other than mine. It was the pen name I, Olivia Harris, had used since my literature club days. Sophie, who didn't know the situation, was puzzled, but Lucas almost shouted, "Olivia wrote this? This is your book?" "What?" Sophie, catching on from Lucas's words, also exclaimed in surprise. Thanks to Mary, I found the opportunity to speak. I glanced at Mary, who looked proud. After smiling at her, I turned back to Lucas and Sophie. "Yes, that's right. Hey Lucas, do you remember what I've been doing at home all this time?" You were writing something for the publishing company you used to work for, right?" Lucas, remembering the past fairly well, answered correctly. Yes, I had continued my work as a writer from home. Initially, it might have been through the publishing company's connections or out of pity. Even so, over time, I honed my writing skills. "That's right. I've been doing that all along." The requests themselves eventually brought in a considerable amount of money, but I didn't stop there. Having refined my skills, I thought I might achieve my long-held dream of becoming an author. So, I boldly submitted my work to a novel contest. And, to my surprise, my writing had improved more than I realized. Actually, I'm a novelist now. My work is even being made into a movie. What? A movie? No way! Their voices, almost screams, showed their disbelief. Of course, it didn't go smoothly from the start. Just like Lucas couldn't become a teacher, I faced continuous struggles. Even while living with Lucas, I submitted many works and faced many rejections. I rekindled my dream around the time Mary graduated from elementary school, which was quite late compared to typical aspiring authors. But I didn't give up. With each submission, I started to see results, passing the first round, then the second. Right after Lucas's assignment began, I won an award and got my book published. Thankfully, the published award-winning book was a hit. My pen name became somewhat known to the public. Subsequent works also received high praise and multiple reprints. With my books selling well, my income naturally increased. So, you see, the breadwinner in this house is no longer Dad. What do you mean? He must be surprised by the unexpected situation. Lucas seemed unable to comprehend something so obvious. Mary, with a wry smile, told Lucas, "Mom has published several books, and all of them are hits. I don't know the exact financial details, but she's probably earning more than you, Dad." Ah! Mary's pointed comment seemed to finally make Lucas realize the truth, leaving him in a daze. Indeed, as Mary said, my income in the second and third years as an author far exceeded Lucas's. And since then, Lucas's remittances had gone untouched. Lucas's delusion that he was supporting us had been nothing more than a misunderstanding for quite some time. So, you don't need to worry about our money. Now, I turned to look at Mary. Mary seemed to understand what I needed to say better than I did. "You don't need to worry about me. Someone who behaves so outrageously is no longer family. Thank you, Mary. So, divorce it is? I was a little surprised at how easily I could say it. I realized that the Lucas Harris I had once known was truly gone. Honestly, I could have made this decision when I became successful as a novelist. I had suspected the affair for some time, though I learned the details today. I could have hired a private investigator and made a decision based on their findings. But with Mary's exams approaching and my lingering desire to believe in Lucas, I hesitated. Now, Mary herself told me not to worry. And Lucas shattered my trust. There was no reason to hesitate any longer. Yes, that's fine. As if to affirm my decision, or rather, definitely affirming it, Mary nodded emphatically. Encouraged by Mary's smile, I turned back to Lucas and Sophie. I made my declaration once again. So, Lucas and I will get a divorce. That's what you want, right? Lucas is faced with an unexpected turn of events, was at a loss for words. Then Sophie spoke up. In that case, pay alimony to Lucas. What? Huh? Her words were so outlandish that both Mary and I, and even Lucas, were taken aback. Ignoring the shocked atmosphere, Sophie continued her selfish demands. You're a successful author, right? Then pay Lucas for his emotional distress. Yeah, that sounds good. To my disbelief, Lucas started to agree with her. While Mary and I were too stunned to speak, they continued. How can you not be ashamed of hiding something so important from me? I've been hurt. Pay alimony. That's right. You should pay us money, madam. You liar. Wait, you're the one who has been deceitful all along. And Lucas never bothered to know. I had tried to tell Lucas several times about my goal of becoming a novelist. But Lucas had dismissed it as a trivial matter or a nagging complaint. Or he mistook it for nagging and didn't want to listen. Eventually, I started to give up on talking to Lucas about my dreams. Even so, if Lucas had continued to show interest in me, if he had tried to listen, I would have told him at any time. But Lucas dismissed my feelings entirely. Shut up! You were trying to keep all the money for yourself, weren't you? And you deceived me. Lucas's selfish interpretation of the situation made me weary. I wanted to end this conversation quickly, but I couldn't think of how. What to do? I pondered. Dad? Since she had declared he was no longer family, Mary seemed to hesitate over how to address him. If we're talking about deception, Sophie has been deceiving you too, Dad. What are you talking about? Isn't that right, sugar? Ignoring Lucas, Mary addressed Sophie. I didn't understand the significance of the name Sugar, but it clearly had a significant meaning for Sophie. Her face turned pale the moment Mary called her that name. Mary, what are you talking about? A little before Dad's assignment began, there was a blow-up incident on the internet. According to Mary, about 3 years ago, a female game streamer with a high male fan base blew up. The root cause of the blow-up was a rumored relationship between her and a male streamer. Initially, both of them denied the rumors. But when another female streamer was rumored to be dating the same male streamer, the situation changed. The first female streamer who blew up claimed she had been cheated on when she had initially denied the rumors. She revealed that she was the one who was dating the male streamer, and also that she was pregnant. From there, it turned into a mess. All 3 parties involved blamed each other, claiming innocence while accusing the others of lying. The first female streamer who blew up in particular made things worse by making statements that alienated her fans after a nasty argument when she should have refrained. As a result, Her past problematic statements and failures were dug up, leading to her losing popularity, which is fatal as a streamer, and she apparently left the internet as if running away. That female streamer was none other than Sugar. I remembered Mary mentioning something like that around that time. Back then, Mary was trying to talk about the importance of internet literacy, without going into details about the streamers' names. Sugar was not only beautiful but also very skilled at games. I watched her streams a few times, so I remembered her face and her distinctive beauty mark. I don't know what you're talking about. Despite her words, Sophie was visibly shaken. Her eyes were darting around, and her body was trembling. So what? Were you even listening? This is why you're hopeless, Dad. Ugh. Lucas groaned at Mary's merciless remark. Ignoring him, Mary continued. Remember? I said Sugar was pregnant with a male streamer's child. Oh! Mary's words finally made Lucas grasp the situation. If Sophie really was Sugar and had been pregnant, what happened to the child? The baby in her arms could very well be that child. Just as Mary had suggested, Lucas might have been deceived too. He had been led to believe that the baby was his and was about to be made to raise them unknowingly. Realizing this, Lucas grabbed Sophie by the shoulders. Hey! What's going on? Tell me it's not true. You said this was my child. Sophie, shaken by Lucas, avoided meeting his eyes. It was probably true. The baby was not Lucas's child. No way! How could this happen? Realizing this, Lucas let go of her shoulders and held his head in his hands. Tears streamed from his eyes, and his mouth trembled. For Lucas, this was an absolute nightmare. Believing he had met his destined partner away from his burdensome family, he had loved and supported her, likely even helped raise the baby up to this point. When Mary was a baby, Lucas had been devoted. He probably cared for Sophie and her baby the same way. And after 3 years of living apart, Lucas likely planned to start everything anew today. But the very foundation of this plan, raising a child with Sophie, whom he believed loved him, was fundamentally flawed. The despair he must be feeling is unimaginable. If I were the same person I was when we got married and Mary was born, I would have rushed to comfort Lucas. But now, any feelings of affection I had for Lucas had completely vanished. I felt a bit sorry for him, but that was all. I'm sorry. Sophie wailed as she sat on the ground, crying. This is ridiculous. I spent my salary to support you, helped with the move, and this is what I get? I said I'm sorry. What? Lucas's voice was full of anger as he glared at her. This woke the baby in Sophie's arms. It was a wonder the baby had been sleeping until now. The baby looked around with a tense expression and soon began to cry. Noticing this, Sophie hurriedly tried to calm and soothe the baby. Stop it, you old codger, you're making the baby cry. Old codger? It seemed Lucas had never been called that before. He looked stunned in a different way now. To Sophie, calling Lucas an old codger was probably natural. Seeing Lucas's shocked expression, Mary almost burst out laughing. Now was the time to intervene. With that in mind, I knelt beside Sophie. Here, let me hold the baby. You don't want to make her cry, right? What? Taking the baby from Sophie, I gently cradled and rocked her side to side. My old parenting skills seemed to still be effective. The baby gradually stopped crying and soon gave me a smile. Both Sophie and Lucas watched in silence, speechless. In the calm atmosphere, I spoke in a gentle voice. Lucas, you talked big, but aren't you the one who's been messing around? What did you think of Mary and me? Well, it was a moment of weakness. Dad. Mary held a finger to her lips, signaling Lucas to be quiet. Not wanting to make the baby cry again, Lucas continued in a subdued voice. I was deceived by her. You and Mary are my only family. Please, forgive me. Had it not been for his recent actions, his words might have been touching. But the fact that he and Sophie had mocked and insulted us couldn't be erased. Sorry, but I can't see it that way anymore. While today's events were decisive, the accumulation of everything that had happened before couldn't be ignored. The rift between us and Lucas was irreparable. I was sure of that. I want a divorce, so prepare yourself for that. And you will pay alimony. Also, Sophie. Yes. Like Lucas, who had just been told we would divorce, Sophie looked pale. She was likely fearing the alimony. After all, she had attached herself to Lucas for the sake of raising a child. I could imagine she didn't have much savings herself. Leaning closer to Sophie, I whispered in a voice Lucas couldn't hear. You don't want to pay alimony, do you? She nodded vigorously at those words. I continued. If you help me gather evidence of Lucas's infidelity, I'll reduce the amount a bit. In reality, if Lucas refused to accept our demands and fought back, getting a divorce wouldn't be easy. With her cooperation and a lawyer's help, we could make it work. Though it angered me to reduce the amount, it was a necessary compromise. Sophie seemed to consider it for a moment before nodding again. This would help settle things. I sighed in relief. The sleeping baby, uncowing of our struggles, came into view, and I couldn't help but smile wryly. 2 months later, Lucas and I were officially divorced. He agreed to pay alimony. Of course, I retained custody of Mary. During our discussions, I reported the infidelity to his parents, who helped mediate, ensuring a fair division of assets. His parents deeply apologized for Lucas's actions. I felt sorry for making them sad, as we had always had a good relationship. Lucas readily agreed to the alimony and the divorce, but he kept insisting on another chance. He claimed he was the victim and that Sophie was the one at fault. His parents were so infuriated by his pathetic display that they thoroughly scolded him, which finally made Lucas give up. As a result, the divorce proceedings were significantly prolonged. Sophie helped gather evidence of the affair, so I reduced her alimony as promised. She agreed to pay it in installments, but her troubles didn't end there. Sophie thought she could live unnoticed on the island until people forgot about her. But that turned out to be a naive thought. Whether someone on the island recognized her or someone persistently tracked her, I don't know. Our divorce scandal might have triggered something. Either way, the fact that sugar was on the island leaked, and the information spread online. Among the reactions were threats suggesting dangerous actions against her. As a result, Sophie couldn't stay on the island and had to leave hurriedly. It seems she continues to be chased by online trolls, leading a harsh life moving from place to place with her baby. Lucas had planned to marry Sophie and continue teaching on the island. He had even completed the necessary paperwork. But the facts about his divorce leaked at his workplace, damaging his reputation severely. Though not as revered as a teacher, a lecturer is still a person in a position of authority. Someone who is cheating shouldn't be in such a position. People wouldn't want that. It's natural for people to feel that way. Eventually, unable to withstand the scrutiny, Lucas resigned voluntarily. This information also reached his former school, and Lucas could no longer work as a lecturer locally. But he still had to pay alimony to me and child support for Mary. With everything falling apart, Lucas took up manual labor, a far cry from his previous work. His body, unaccustomed to physical labor, couldn't keep up, and he's now exhausted and emaciated. I saw a photo of his first love, the teacher, during a discussion with his parents, and honestly, except for the tear mole, she didn't resemble Sophie. It was probably just an excuse for his escapism. I wonder, what if he had never given up on his dream of becoming a teacher? Maybe he wouldn't have had the affair, and we could have lived happily as a family. But that's just wishing things had been different. Lucas chose his path to ruin and kept going. Now, I can only hope he finishes paying child support and alimony and then lives a decent life. As for me, I'm doing well as a novelist. When I told my editor about using this experience as a story, they were excited and found it interesting, so I plan to write it seriously. Mary is also living her student life without any issues. I was worried the prolonged situation might affect her, but she seems fine. Still, there's a chance she's dealing with hidden stress. So, I plan to take her out for a luxurious dinner soon. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to live happily with Mary and cherish our time together.
Mom, do you hear something?
It was a weekday afternoon, and I had just returned home with my daughter, preparing for exams, who had come down with a fever. From the supposedly empty second floor of our house, we could strangely hear noises. Noticing something was amiss, my daughter and I carefully ascended the stairs, trying not to make any sound. That day, my husband was supposed to have left early in the morning to attend a gathering at his in-laws' house with relatives. Yet, the car he was supposed to use was parked in our driveway. I had a bad feeling about this. And then, we noticed the sound was coming through from the bedroom door on the second floor.
This can't be happening. Please no.
I peeked through the slightly open door. My daughter, feeling nauseous, covered her mouth and stepped back. Perhaps because it was a small noise, the ongoing sounds didn't stop. In the bed of our bedroom was my husband. And with him was Sophia, my mother-in-law, known for her beauty that defied her age. Yes, what unfolded before my eyes was my husband having an affair with his own mother. My husband was kind to both my daughter and I, and also respected his mother as well, seemingly the perfect man. But those memories shattered into pieces like fragile glass. While on the verge of tears, my daughter tried to make me step back. However, despite the shock, I managed to hold up my mobile phone. Without them noticing us, I captured enough evidence of the two. Then, I left to let my sick daughter rest.
Aria, I'll talk to the two of them. Please wait downstairs and keep warm.
My name is Isabella, 45 years old. I work at an office and live happily with my husband William, who is 4 years younger than me, and our daughter Aria, preparing for her college entrance exams. I met my husband through my father. Our fathers were close through business, and since we were close in age, our fathers introduced each other. At that time, my husband was still in his second year of a sales job, young, and I, being older, often felt intimidated. However, he was kind to me and asked me out. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and soon after, he proposed. The in-laws I met during our marriage introduction seemed classy and very kind. Sophia looked quite young, and she was only 37 when Willem and I got married. But then I learned she remarried William's father when my husband was in middle school. Despite not being blood-related, the in-laws' house felt very close and seemed that they understood each other very well. At the introduction of the in-laws, my husband said, "After Dad remarried Mom, I finally understood what it means for a family to become one. I grew up without a mom and felt lonely, but because Sophia cherished our family, I am who I am today. I want to build a family like that with Isabella." But suddenly, I felt uneasy about the closeness between Sophia and him. I heard he was enthusiastic about household chores, but he would often leave me to help Sophia with her cooking. They exchanged conversations happily, consulting about recipes while working together. Sophia was very kind to me, but I felt the balance with my husband was off. Although there was a slight discomfort, I was more surprised by how close in age Sophia and I were. I thought I was overthinking it and let it go. Then, with blessings from both parents and relatives, we had our wedding. Life as a married couple began, and my husband's keenness on housework was very comforting. He was a salesman who excelled at all household tasks. All taught by Sophia. Feeling secure, our married life was peaceful, and within a year, we were blessed with a child. My husband was delighted and became even more diligent at work. He would come home late every day, but frequently messaged me during the day, showing his concern. I was having a healthy pregnancy. But one day, my husband said, "Since it's your first childbirth, I want you to feel safe and not worry so much." And so he suggested I go back to my parents' house to give birth. Indeed, I had been feeling anxious about childbirth and parenting, leading to many gloomy days. I was planning to take maternity and parental leave, but it was difficult to obtain parental leave at my husband's workplace. For these reasons, I was grateful that my husband suggested going back to my parents. Indeed, I'm a bit anxious, and having support from my parents would be reassuring. I'm considering going back home to give birth.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If it makes you feel at ease, I'll do anything,"
he said, respecting my decision and happily seeing me off. My husband, skilled in household chores, had no trouble keeping our home spotless every day. With Sophia around, I had nothing to worry about while I was away and could face childbirth with peace of mind. And so, our daughter, Arya, was born without any issues. Due to frequent sudden business trips, it was difficult for my husband to take paternity leave. However, he managed his limited time well and played a significant role in parenting. On his days off, he spent time with our daughter, reducing my burden, and our nearby in-laws often came over to visit and went out together. Even after our daughter was born, my husband would often rely on Sophia, calling her to come over, wanting to spend time together. Mom has never had a child of her own, so I want to give her the chance to bond with a baby. My husband always cared for Sophia. I fully embraced the idea and said, "I guess even without blood ties, such a deep parent-child relationship can be built." And I thought of my husband as a kind, mom-loving person. Since Sophia was a housewife, she could take care of Arya in my stead when I returned to work. During the day, we relied on childcare centers and babysitters, so it wasn't like we left our daughter alone all the time. But Sophia would visit our home whenever she had the time. "Sophia, I'm sorry for always making you clean up. It's shameful of me to rely on you and take up your time when I should be doing more."
"It's okay. I enjoy doing this. Besides, I never had the chance to raise a baby, so I want to help as much as I can. This is how I wanted to spend my time."
Whenever I apologized, feeling guilty, she would kindly respond like this. Not only Sophia always meticulously cleaned for us, but also left behind elaborate meals. And so with the help of Sophia, we somehow managed to raise our daughter. Time flew by, and now our daughter is 17. Preparing for the challenging entrance exams of a prestigious national university, attending daily supplementary lessons and tutoring. Around this time, we received an invitation to gather at the in-laws' house with relatives. It was a weekday, so I had work. And my daughter would be late due to supplementary lessons, so I want to drive her home for safety. All right, how about I represent this family and go alone? It's better to have someone who can drive to stay behind to pick up Arya, and they said they'll order takeout, so no need for kitchen help. And taking a day off might look bad at work, right? That makes sense. I feel bad for Mom and the others, but could you please go on our behalf? With only a few people attending, my daughter and I decided to stay behind. However, in the middle of the day, I received a call from the school. Your daughter has developed a fever and is feeling unwell. And my husband went alone. Concerned it might be the flu, I rushed out of work in a panic to pick her up. Fortunately, it seemed like it was just fatigue from the changing seasons and not the flu. While picking up some easy-to-eat items like jelly on our way home, I noticed something odd. My husband's car, which shouldn't have been there, was parked in the driveway. He had said that morning, "I'm going to pick up some elderly relatives." My daughter noticed too and tilted her head. "Is Dad back?" Trying not to let my agitation show, I replied, "Maybe he forgot something." As we entered, my heart sank. The sight of unfamiliar women's shoes scattered beside my husband's, not belonging to me. A dreadful premonition swelled within me. I told my daughter to enter quietly. She looked puzzled but followed my instruction to enter the house without making noise. Feeling sorry for her condition and wanting to settle her down for rest, we headed to her room on the second floor. However, on our way up the stairs, we noticed something was off.
"Mom, do you hear something?"
Indeed, there were faint sounds, like voices. I led the way, trying to identify the source of the noises. It seemed to come from our bedroom. Despite a bad feeling, I couldn't stop myself. The bedroom door was inexplicably ajar, allowing us a glimpse inside. Peeking in, it was clear who was there. My husband and Sophia, who shouldn't have been there. I could feel the presence of them from the bed. The voices and sounds made it obvious they were in the midst of an affair. My daughter, realizing what was happening in the bedroom, covered her mouth, looking nauseous, and stepped back.
"This can't be happening. Please no."
My daughter clung to me with eyes filled with tears. She was trying to get me, who had become immobile, to back away. Truthfully, I felt like I might collapse at any moment too. I had seen the scene more clearly than my daughter, and I couldn't believe this was reality. My mind went completely blank. My husband had always been so kind. But, had his kindness always been primarily directed towards Sophia? Was he pretending to be the perfect husband, the perfect dad, just to keep their affair secret? My daughter had always looked up to her dad. The regret of having her witness such a horrific scene was overwhelming. "Wait downstairs." I told my daughter so and somehow managed to urge her to quietly leave the area. "I'll go talk to them." "Since you're feverish, could you rest in the guest room and stay warm?" She seemed reluctant to leave me, but she finally acquiesced. She nodded and went downstairs with a worried look on her face. I didn't want to make a scene while she was in the house. But I couldn't just overlook this situation. At any rate, I thought to myself, I need to document this. Even if I couldn't confront them in the bedroom right then, capturing this scene was necessary to prevent any future denials. I had been thoroughly betrayed by both my husband and Sophia, so there was no time for hesitation or to consider their feelings or reasons. I immediately took out my mobile phone and started recording with the video camera, capturing the oblivious pair for a while. Perhaps because I had sent my daughter away, the nausea I had been fighting back seemed to subside, and my thoughts gradually became clearer and more composed. And I realized I couldn't face my husband and Sophia alone. In order to arrange a calm discussion, I made up my mind. After stopping the recording, I attached the video to a message and sent it. The recipients were the relatives gathered at the in-laws' house. By that evening, relatives arrived at our house with expressions of shock and panic. Sophia and my husband, having gone to sleep after their act, hadn't woken up for several hours until the relatives gathered. While checking on my daughter, I nervously waited in the living room on the first floor, trying not to make any noise for the relatives. Could my father-in-law John, who holds a high position in a large company, be relied upon at such a time? However, the fury of John, who had arrived, was fierce. Since I had informed them in advance that my daughter was ill and resting, they did not storm in shouting, but the level of anger was such that it wouldn't have been surprising if it had escalated to a police matter had my daughter not been there. Sophia and my husband were woken up by the relatives and brought down to the living room, both with pale faces. After giving my daughter food and fever medicine, I had moved her to her room on the second floor to rest. John confronted the two, sitting down, with the video I had recorded.
When did you start deceiving both Isabella and I by engaging in such a relationship?
John inquired in a low voice. My husband began to speak hesitantly, and as he did, shocking truths were revealed. He said his relationship with Sophia began around the time our daughter was born, when I was away due to childbirth. He had harbored feelings for Sophia since he was a child, when they first met. At that time, Sophia, the newly remarried mother, was only 27 years old and William was 14. It was more like the age of a sister than a mother. My husband, wanting to be close to Sophia, who was kind to him as a mother, actively helped with cooking and cleaning, even as a son. Sophia thought of him as a good son who got along well with his new mother, but it seems he was satisfied harboring his one-sided affection. Despite not being blood-related, they were in a parent-child relationship. Understanding they couldn't be together, my husband began to look for a marriage partner in an attempt to move on from his feelings for Sophia. Hearing about this, he was introduced to me by the in-laws, and thus we ended up marrying, going along with the flow. I could only stare at him in disbelief, remembering all the kind gestures, unable to believe what I was hearing.
But I couldn't forget her. Rather, as we lived together as husband and wife, I kept thinking, why Isabella? Why not Mom? And so, when Isabella went back to her parents' house, I gave in to my feelings.
Of course, my husband didn't force himself on Sophia. Sophia, with tears, said, "At first, I was aware of and resisted the betrayal. But as they continued their secret meetings, their guilt seemed to fade away. At the time of their remarriage, due to the in-laws' age, there was no discussion about having a second child. This led to their marital relations becoming distant early on. My husband was aware that Sophia felt lonely. Sophia, who always had a preference for handsome men, found herself irresistibly drawn to her young and well-featured stepson. Despite her initial resistance, she eventually succumbed to his advances. We listened to her candid confession, struggling to suppress our nausea. This relationship had continued for 17 years until now. All of us, including myself and the relatives, were speechless. It was revealed that my husband told me he would attend the family gathering, while he told the relatives that our family would not be able to attend. Sophia left the house early in the morning, claiming she suddenly felt ill and needed to visit the hospital, but she went straight to our home where my husband greeted her, and they headed to the bedroom. This was not the first time such lies were told. All of us had been deceived for 17 years. The relatives could have handled the situation maturely if it were just among adults, but the fact that their relationship was known to their own daughter compounded the issue, leading to strong disapproval.
I can't believe you've been sneaking around and deceiving everyone like this. Think about what society will say. How do you plan to explain this to Arya? This isn't just about the two of you. Do you understand?
The relatives took turns denouncing the two. However, they seemed to become defiant, beginning to defend each other. We truly love each other.
There's no blood relation. It's not a problem since we're not actually a parent and a child. Maybe it's Dad's fault for neglecting her.
I silently endured their painful excuses. John and I demanded a divorce from our partners. Neither my husband nor Sophia opposed, and all parties present signed the divorce papers on the spot. Later, John and I hired lawyers to seek compensation related to the divorce. Considering the impact on our daughter, my ex-husband had already moved out to live in a hotel, where Sophia, now ousted from her home, joined him. They decided to live together openly, but Sophia, having been a housewife for many years and was used to marrying a high-earning executive, was known for her extravagant spending, which my ex-husband only discovered after moving in with her. Although she was familiar with housework and known for her cooking skills, she always wore expensive-looking clothes and bags. She seemed to have a vast collection of outfits, rarely seen wearing the same scarf twice, always dressing fashionably. Despite my ex-husband's high salary as a top salesperson, this arrangement didn't last long. A friend from my college days, who happened to work at my ex-husband's company, informed me post-divorce about various matters. Apparently, he frequently left work during weekdays for secret meetings with Sophia. This behavior, revealed during the divorce proceedings, was seen as nothing but short of negligence by his company. Frustrated by his lack of commitment and the recent absenteeism due to the divorce scandal, the management decided to transfer him to a department filled with employees nearing retirement. His new boss was younger than him, but due to complex hierarchies and positions, all menial tasks like making copies and cleaning fell to my ex-husband. This department had no significant work, yet mistakes were somehow common. My ex-husband was always the one apologizing to his younger boss, which greatly stressed him. His stress soon manifested physically, accelerating his hair loss. Once known for his good looks, his popularity among women plummeted as he aged and looked increasingly haggard. Moreover, the details of his affair with Sophia, supposedly known to only a few supervisors, leaked. This led to widespread knowledge of his divorce, resulting in him being ostracized and leading a lonely life at work. Despite a decrease in his salary, Sophia's spending habits remained unchanged, leading to financial strain and arguments, with my ex-husband eventually forcing Sophia to take a part-time job. Reluctantly, Sophia started working part-time but internally believed men should be the ones earning money. This attitude led to workplace conflicts, and she frequently quit jobs soon after being hired. Despite having loved each other desperately while hiding it from everyone around them, eventually, the two of them could no longer avoid constant arguments. However, Sophia had nowhere to go even if she was to be pushed out. My ex-husband seemed to understand this and, while leading a loveless life, continued to pay us compensation while living frugally. As for me, I returned to my parents' home with my daughter. With the compensation from my ex-husband and the money from selling our house, I managed to move to a location more convenient for my daughter's desired university. Thanks to her hard work, my daughter successfully passed the entrance exam to her first-choice university. For better or worse, the town where my daughter grew up had too many memories associated with our family and the in-laws' house. To erase those painful memories, we decided to start anew and rented a modest detached house. I am still in contact with John. He had offered that the compensation money demanded from him should be used entirely for his granddaughter's tuition. It's atonement for what my former wife and son have done. John said so, but he is one of the few blood relatives my daughter has. Being unemployed and without income after resigning, I gratefully accepted his offer. We don't communicate frequently, but John and I keep in touch, and occasionally, we invite him over for a meal together at our home. Now, I have just managed to re-enter the workforce, watching over my daughter as she works hard towards her dreams. Leveraging my previous office job experience, my income has somewhat stabilized. Perhaps because it was a shock for everyone, my daughter has stopped bringing up my ex-husband and Sophia. However, now that she has become a vibrant university student, I hope she can forget the past and enjoy her days of learning. We are starting to lead fulfilling lives, both personally and professionally.